Hello, it's Dale here. Welcome to Role Play Cafe. We'll do a little video. More so, I'm prompted to do it because Jason and Sam put up recaps and reflections on Sam running us, Jason and I, through Second Chronicles of Dark Age of Man, which has been fantastic, and we really appreciate Sam doing that for us. We get a chance to both play together in the game. I mean, it's happened before in early pre-testing. Kevin ran us, Brian ran us. I think that was it in one shots. This will give us a chance to kind of um, play the finished version of the game in a more fully realized session to session um, character development mode for both of us. But just to start out, because I do this more stream of conscious, I want to point out something that I think what we're trying to do with the game in generally steering um, away from the traditional concept or a little bit of a mythic concept or the leaning of traditional play toward very mechanized play. That would be that you play when I used to play back in the day. Maybe I would, if I was playing a dwarf, maybe I would do something stereotypically in a dwarfish voice every once in a while, but it wasn't on that. I'd play if the dwarf was an avatar of myself in that position. I'd utilize my faculties. I would try to do, min max, as they say, to the best of my abilities to have the dwarf survive. And it was very much like a RPG where you may pause the game, right? You can't play. We didn't play live that much. It was a lot of pauses, a lot of analysis paralysis, and gathering beforehand, grouping together to see what we wanted to do to be maximally efficient. And that was pretty much the standard of play. I think people have a natural inclination and tendency to fall back toward that. If given opportunity, they're going to sit and plan. They're going to scour the book to see what they can buy. That's going to increase their statistics of survival. So there's an overabundance of that. There's was a lot of reading of the rules to a large degree to be able to find or counter something that the GM would say to where you could actually gain an advantage. And there's nothing wrong with it. This is, when we got those books back in the day, and I'm talking about like with, I joined in, in 83, 84 with Mincer. I think Jason was like Mulvey and even probably Holmes before that. But there's always been, and nobody, we really didn't read it. A lot of this was, passed down to me by just community around a table and people learning to play. There might have been a few of us who actually read it or read it part way, but nobody really loves reading instruction manuals. To this day, I'll pass the 4-page manual off to my son and say, read this and tell me what to do. Tell me what to do, right? So you can read thoroughly, but a lot of people don't have a tendency, myself included, to overly read something unless it's really interesting. And I do get into game mechanics quite a bit now, more so than ever. But I was always inclined to do that. If I'm in a mechanical mindset, like if I'm playing a war game, which I used to, I would go into my mind palace and do the calculations to make sure that I was maximally effective. And that's how it transposed itself to when I role played, right? So the character role playing development was peripheral, was really secondary. It didn't have much to do with what we were there for, which was essentially the fast track to the next combat simulation. And the rules, I will say the rules themselves, whenever the rules came up, it was an opportunity for almost celebration. You could bring them out and then look at it. And I call it like looking under the hood, like we're mechanics on a car looking under the hood. And being amazed by the inner workings, the mechanics of the machine, and how could we get it to run faster or do this or etc. So there's that mindset of play, to where you take that opportunity uh, to pull out the rule books and scour over them and try to uh, utilize them to your best benefit and leverage in the game, right? So you've beaten the game you know, by doing this. This is a lot of even how I approach role playing games in video games. A lot of it is to cheat the system, as it were. Of course, I play a lot of games like Gothic and Risen and games like that, right? From Piranha Bytes and whatnot. But nevertheless, this isn't about that, as Ivan says. This is about, I wanted to say that when we started Dark Age of Man, it was really to move forward. I think Jason said to me once when he was playing, and he GM'd his brother, and it was a spy game, probably top secret, right? So his brother reacted, and I think maybe his brother's first turn, when he was in, I believe it was an elevator with a spy, and his brother was there, and then his brother just grabbed the spy and threw him up against the wall and put the gun in his mouth and was going to do this. And I think Jason was shocked and taken aback a second, like, we're not doing anything procedurally. I haven't asked you what you want to do. You just did it, right? Like proactively, doing something, and then they had to do that. I think that kind of awakened. I don't want to speak for Jason in that term, but if it didn't awaken anything for him, which he's the one who stated to me, so I'm assuming it did. It did for me too. So it was kind of a pivot point in how I viewed role playing. Like I said, I'd already been predetermined, like in war games and whatnot, to really get into the mathematics of it, and it kind of transitioned over into role play. But what do you really want to role play, or why do you really want to play role playing games for? I've often said that if now looking back, if I want to get into a game where I'm more tactically and overall strategically or minded about stats and everything, I'll play like a Warhammer game, with miniatures moving around and measuring distances and what I can do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of the D&D games, third edition and whatever, I remember all those charts that we never did really use, and you can play with miniatures and have fun. When you get to that part, you can lay them all out. And so I think they've tried to emulate both styles in role-playing game, which there was a strong leaning towards selling miniatures, and of course it's more profitable for the company to do that. It leans into that aspect more. So it's throughout the community of more of the pushed style of play, right? And it's more, like I said, naturally given for people to kind of think in those terms, right? Board games and rules, and what does the rules say? I mean, rules lawyers and one-upping each other, bolstering your own ego and confidence by saying something that somebody, I've been in all kinds of different games with all kinds of different people, and that's, a lot of times you'll have them negative aspects that come out, a lot of times, the game would grind to a halt for debating over rules and this and that. I'm like, we just wasted 2 hours. I mean, of the 2 hours we spent playing, we wasted 45 minutes going over excessive in detail page flipping. And even in that, if there's more moving parts in the game, when you have a lot of rule lookup and a lot of stopping and calculations, it's going to, in one aspect, I think it's meant to satisfy that portion of what's being represented in typically a battle situation is represented. So you could think, okay, well, they've taken that into stock and into account and calculated it into it. So there's a feeling of like, okay, we've got that, we've got this accounted for, we got that. And so you get more of a truer determination of what actually happened, because people know what would most likely happen. And if all the factors are considered, then it's more of a truer, result. At least in my mind, that's the way it's kind of, put out to me to where games can get really heavy and crunchy and detailed to where you have to stop and factor in. And there's always, I mean, there's a learning curve first off, but there's anything that you do, if it's really crunchy, if there's a lot of rules that have to be taken into account when you're playing, as a GM facilitating these rules, you have to be really knowledgeable and get to be maybe a greased, old, well-oiled machine with your players. They become knowledgeable, and then you can roll. You can roll with it. I often refer to it as role playing instead of roll, ROLL play instead of ROLE, because it's that kind of a primary focus where it goes. And I did that most of my time playing role-playing games. But like I said, to go back to what Jason said in the elevator when that happened, when his brother said that, it kind of took him back, I believe, and it certainly took me back to say, well, what are we really here for? I want to stop and say a couple of things, or read a couple of things, actually. This is Keep on the Borderlands, and that's probably backwards here, by Gary Gygax, okay? I'm going to page 4 and just read a little clip. In combat, the DM should play the monsters to the best of the monster's ability. If the creature is stupid, it may be easily tricked or may not always do the smartest thing. If the monster is clever or intelligent, it will fight to its best advantage. Okay, put a pin in that one. I'm going to go to the game that I got started with, right? Beautiful. All right, page 52. All right. This chapter is called Players Are Not Characters. When the players, in this book, it says at the start of the dedication, it stays true to the original intent of the authors, right? But it says, when the players remember the difference between themselves and the characters, everyone can have more fun in role-playing. If a character has low intelligence and wisdom scores, for example, and then does something stupid, the player can honestly say, I was playing my character. And the others should remember not to get mad at that player. Their characters may indeed get mad at the stupid character, but it's very important to remember that the player is a different person. The caveat of this should not be used as an excuse for bad or selfish play. DM keeps aware of that. So, that being said, there's that aspect of role play, whether it's hidden or just was never read, that even in the original books from Messer and Mulvey, that was that awareness that when you were playing a character, and this is only primarily associated to reading the stats and interpreting the stats. Like I heard Jason say, if he's playing, and I'll do this too, like a character with low intelligence, I'm not going to play like it as an avatar of myself using my own faculties, not basing it on my own intelligence or whatever, but I'll play as a character in that world and judge where his intellect is, whether it's par or subpar or above par, and I'll try to play it appropriate to the situation, right? And of course, that leads to more genuine representation of that character. Now, there is an aspect of, and that's just a throwback to let you know that there was an awareness of at least playing characters true to their abilities, right? And there was another statement in there that you have to realize that you're taking on persona of sorts, to where you're playing another character. I didn't think of that right before I pulled up the book, but it's in there too, right? So you're taking on an alter ego when you're playing it. You're not playing yourself as an avatar. You're playing this character in this world. So there was that awareness too. I know that whenever these games developed, it was kind of just offhand thought that you start at 18 or whatever, like a raw recruit. I think a lot of this is kind of pulled from being like wargaming overall and down to a microcosm of an individual. And then you play that one role as an individual inside of a combat simulation, and then so they're not factoring, all the stats ain't factoring in like platoons and whatnot. It goes down to a single individual. But they were, at least aware of the persona or the alter ego that you were playing. So that's been there. Whether we didn't read it at the times, or whether nobody took note of it, or whether it was just everybody was too enamored with the rules and what could factor in to be more advantageous for that character, you play into the maximum of your stats to survive. Because let's face it, it was dangerous. You know what I mean? There's a lot of times you can't afford to play a character just stupid in situations where you got traps to spring out. It was pretty lethal, because even in these books it says, yeah, you let the chips fall where they may. You're not supposed to, as a GM, you're not supposed to, because the characters want something. You're not supposed to start throwing. It's no adversarial thing. You don't throw more monsters at them. You just as a referee, be impartial and neutral and throw out what is supposed to be there and what you've scripted to be out there. And so I'll get back to what Sam had said in his video. But you throw it there and see if they survive, right? So it's not it should not be an adversarial thing like the versus, right? As I think some people had a tendency to kind of do. A lot of times, I mean, like I said, you can afford to be a stupid character and sabotage, and that can oftentimes cause more disruption at the table than anything else. Somebody's doing something they would know is better, but something the character necessarily wouldn't, Or even if you've got a character, like if you've imagined a character that has difficulties, or in newer games taking flaws or taking whatnot, to where they react in certain ways to certain, if they're have arachnophobia and then they fight the spider, what are they going to do? Turn around and run. So there's prompts in a lot of games that kind of give you, or suggest to certain players to make their characters more flavorful to that role play, character development. I mean, those are prompts I've gotten into. The more I played over the years, the last 6 years or so, the more I've tried to represent the character as is and see where the character is developed. I remember, I played, in Ivan's game about 1.5 years, played from my son's perspective, when he was little, in my characters. And it was kind of a way for me to delve into it and see where he was coming from, or what would prompt him to do this in these situations. So it's like, less sympathetic and more empathetic toward different archetypes or different type of personalities, or so it became something more of like an examination. So you could do that. Other characters I pull up, I play in a way that I want to see what makes a certain personality tick, or what they would do, or try to understand from their perspective. So a lot of my initial delvings into playing different characters was based on different type of people, or different people that either I knew or just, stereotypical people, to try to understand more from that. So it's more of me reaching out to try to be empathetic and learn from, right? So it is examination in that respect. Now, also, there is an aspect of whenever I played, delving into just wanting to know a character, and imagining a character from a situation, okay? Not necessarily from a psychological position. But I remember we was playing, I think it was Ash, and my character had died, so it's going to generate a new one that was out in the tundras, right? Well, it was the plains, and it was a little wooded area out there, and it was a little ways off from our original home bases, where we were left. We was trying to get back. Well, wintertime snowed. I had, in that moment, when I wanted to vision an older man that had been out as a trapper on that furthest reaches and outskirts of the main village that he would trap and then bring back in and do some trade in the main city, right? But he would be snowblind and he would be this and that, but he'd mainly go on his hearing. So I had this conceptualization of this character. And when he was playing, the rules wouldn't allow it because you had to start, it was still based on the early games where there was just I don't think, too much of thought geared toward character, fully realized, fully fleshed out concepts of character, more so than starting out as a raw recruit and then building that character along the way, which there's nothing wrong with that. I like to have a little freedom of expression because generally whenever I come up with a character, he's kind of more fully realized and I want to see what happens to this character. This is some of the things that we tried to address in Dark Age of Man, developing it. Because when I go into a character, take this game that Sam's running for us, right? Jason puts up, he can imagine, we know the situation, he can imagine his character, he's a merchant, spice merchant, and he's sickly and pale and gaunt, and he's got a bodyguard because he's got a little bit of money, so he affords to do that. Well, I can say, well, let's make everything even, and I need this or I need that, because I think people are too preoccupied with like evening things out. If you take a fault, then you get a positive to that. I played characters where I've added conceptual faults further than I need to do in a game that allowed me to take faults or flaws. In my character development, I would add situations like that. Like Leads of Adventure, I had this whole concept of the doctor I was playing. He was more of an army doctor that I just tagged on to him, and whenever I reached a situation like that, I would respond in kind to how he was respecting to his or reacting. The doctor was reacting to his stimuli with his prior demons or his prior worldviews, concepts that he held, and how they came into contact and maybe contrast or up against his situations in the world and the NPCs in the world. That's interesting to me. So, like I said, those situations like the old trapper, this snowblind, was born from the environment situation that we found ourselves in, that I could see him walking out of the snow. But I couldn't do that. So I had to come up with someone who was 18 years old or 19, whatever the allowable thing was. It was Greenhorn because he started with low stats and he has to build himself up, right? Well, Jason makes this character. He's got a bodyguard. I said, Del, what do you want to make? Okay, so I create a priest, a monk, in the monastery outside of Dredgewater. Said that he had been there, during Father Falcone. He kind of helped instigate and install the orchards and work the garden. So he's been there for a good long while. Just puts a question on his allegiances. Okay, just to be blunt. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a loose concept I had in my head. But as you play Dark Age of Man, and when my character comes up against the realities of the world he sees and the situations that develop around him and how they play out, it's going to push and pull him and give him more of a clear, defined, and come into focus what he truly believes. If he's been wrestling with anything to whatever degree, he may lean to one side 60-40 or be unsure about certain things. But as he lives in a character and as he develops, they're going to become more to view. I had him during the start of that. He was hunched over a little bit timid, wouldn't meet the eye immediately. He covetous nature when he was holding on to his prized package as he was walking into the feast hall. Stopped to speak to Vidar and walk over there. He was dragging his leg, right? His club-footed, lame leg. And even, the way that you represent a character visually can mean a lot. This is where I like playing games that have video on them, because when I come up there and talk to Sam, who's playing Lord Wesley Westweld, And I tell him of my concern about the bishop, almost dropping this in his lap, but volunteer to go up there because my character would be. The Bishop Aethelwald's been out of pocket for 6 months. I'm starting to wonder about him, but I've got my own reasons, right? And the look on Sam's face as he sees me with my body language, my facial expressions, as he takes a piece of cloth that Westwell sees as a holy relic of sort and passes it to me to take along on my journey to go find the Bishop Aethelwald. In my mind, in that moment, my character has to, even though he's on a fence in a way, you can almost read him in his face. He gives it away. The facade drops a little bit. Okay. So he takes this cloth almost like he's very reluctant and like he doesn't want to hold it and keep away from it. And it's not out of like respect so much as it is cautionary, potentially disgusted that, but he's trying to hold that. And Sam's looking at me like, why would this character not grab this thing? Well, that remains to be seen, because I am, the way Sam and the way Jason are running their characters real time in response to stimuli that is happening in game. Sam representing the NPCs, Jason representing his character and his bodyguard, me representing mine. I have to respond genuinely to how my character would in those moments. So I did not expect Westwell to give me that, and that was something that, as far as my character didn't. There was some confliction that arose on his face, and even Sam didn't know exactly how Westwell would respond. So it's easy as him just rolling a dice to see which, if he determines something, or if he's caught up in his idol about, finding somebody who will go get the bishop. Obviously he's inflamed with some passion about that, and maybe he didn't catch necessarily that. So he rolls, and we play from there. But it's so great in those moments for presenter and player, and we're all interacting in a true, genuine, honest way on a role play level, ROLE, that there's some emotions going back and forth. And that well, if you listen to Sam's video about the pending political strife and the admittance of the alderman and his son to both their pent up disdain, is probably, through alcohol has loosened their lips, like my character told Jason's character, he's inebriated, maybe he'll sleep it off, And when I went to, my character went back to the Abbey after we part ways, and Jason's character, Janice, agrees to travel north with me in tow, under the guise of pilgrimage. They're going to see that anchorite in Northwich to determine what has gone on, right? So my character wants to send, that package that I had referenced earlier was the pigeon that I would send back. Wanted to let Westwell see the pigeon, and it would come back with the information that I had. Since I do that, they've been using pigeons since the Egyptian time, right? To carry messages back and forth. I don't want to get too much in on my character, because this stuff can only be really appreciated when it's done live and in things. And I can't say too much about my character because I don't know exactly where he stands. His views are going to potentially change. You see that really evident in the situation we had in the first Chronicles with Vidar and his position, and with Sylvester's position, and with Sam's Aethelwald. They were all opposed, working together, but there was external reasons that they needed to work together, but they were also individuals. This is not like a game where like a task force team where everybody is single-minded toward moving together and doing it, an accomplished goal. I often readily like the dynamics, the inter-party dynamics that you see. I'll reference like the A-Team was on, a minute ago, and you got all these different characters they have internal strife, but they still got each other's back when it needs to be because there's an external danger or situations that's keeping them tied for some reason. So there's a little bit of external push and there's internal strife, which is more, to me, more palatable. As witnessed in the First Chronicles, the realizations and the revelations and letting go, and you see these characters being like evolving in play by interacting with one another. You don't really see too much in other games per se, right? It's not really a focus. The focus is tunneled toward external uh, representations or situations that the DM or GM puts in front of the playing group party. They each have a role, which might be, I'm the healer, I'm this. Let's work together as one unified force. This, we're trying to play people with different worldviews, conflicting worldviews, and different avenues and paths and directions of how they wish to resolve something that comes into conflict. In the earlier sessions, whenever Sylvester had to run off a little bit quicker, and he told me to Vidar to watch the shopkeep, and I do, and then shopkeep admits to me something that he's a pagan, that Vidar is not, that only came to light, I think, really explicitly in that moment when Vidar was tasked, and according to the town mandate, to eradicate the pagans. So that's what he does, to the chagrin of everybody there when he drags his body out and throws it down, and people have to go, wait a minute, what is occurring here? And I know that could be potentially some kind of divisive thing, but I think automatically when players work together in a group, there's a tendency to, address the external forces, and it's pleasurable to allow a certain amount of internal strife to be worked out and hammered out to where these characters learn to live and grow together. So there's that whole other section of role playing that you don't get to see much, that we like to at least highlight and give a lot of time to. Whether it's, like I say, in between players and NPCs, which is presented by the presenter. And those, I'm sure that presenter, I know the characters that he's portraying, these NPCs, are having revelations. You see that with Wesley Westweld in the First Chronicles. He had to come to some kind of realization that he wasn't just under the shadow of his father. He could have to stand up on his own and lead. It was something bringing him to that knowledge. Otherwise, if we wouldn't, that town would not have, it would have fallen and taken over by the alderman, Daedric, which obviously in this Chronicles we find out is still nursing that wound. If he wants to reignite, if he can find any reason that Westwell is not good, or shed some negative light on Westweld, to really expound upon or magnify any of his failings, to put himself in a better light, then he can do that. I think last time in this last Chronicle session Sam runs through, maybe he stuck his foot a little bit too deep into his mouth this time and can't chew it off, because he said it in front of his people, and his son went off a little bit, and now Vidar knows, right? So there's at least a tie between Vidar and that. But see, all these little intricacies that happen. When Sam was speaking about rolling on the random seed chart and having to realize, what do I do with this? It's a spy. How do you work that in? These things drop in front of you, and they will grow out. And like Jason said, it's like planting a tree, because they're going to grow out, and some of these roots are going to entangle with the others, and branches are going to entangle with the other seeds. And it more or less, in the wake of all these other previous seeds that's been dropped, and you drop a new seed, they can be interwoven into the fabric of what has happened before. And pretty soon you've got this tapestry of events, and you're living them live. So they're really personal and innate. And you've been there watching them go and grow to where it's live. It's more of an experience an intrinsically personal level. And that's what we're trying to do with the game. We want the rules to be minimal. The more moving parts that you have, the more, like I said, a lot of games you could play for 2 hours and 45 minutes, be page, arguing and then somewhat page flipping and what happened. We want that center of the table, the communal mind's eye, to be flowing more so. We want less pauses, roadblocks to inhibit the immersion, the communal immersion that is happening. Because like even Sam noted, I think he was on my character a little bit longer than he goes, wait a minute, we're all into this. Jason's character. Jason is going to be listening and picking up on the dot. He knows what's going on, right? So we're all experiencing this. Even the private moments, we know nobody's going to metagame. When my character goes in the little cloister and removes that board and pulls out the cross that he had been holding on to more so readily, and kissing more so readily than he would even touch the holy relic that Westwell passed to him of Brother Aethelwald, or now Bishop Aethelwald. And then he clicks and slides the sheath off the bottom and you see a dagger. And he puts a poison salve on it and reclicks it, reclasps it, and hangs around his neck. And that's right before the situation happens where I come out and the religious activists or zealots or people with questions, because obviously as these seeds have been dropped, there is some, like Sam said, some kind of political thing going on here, and some people are still questioning, is this the best path we should have taken, being the one that was taking at the end of the first chronicle conclusion, where there was kind of a harmonization of pagan and Christian. We had to come together to oust the Northern Army. Is it really a peace? Are there people trying to topple that peace? People trying to keep it together? People thinking that one way should have been, or maybe the pagan inclusion is more of a virus, all kind of different things. So whenever I walk out and I see that going on, I try to tell them to stop because I've got things to do. And they said, no. So I just ring the bell to alert the authorities down on the hill. And luckily Vidar gets it in time to somewhat stop it before. And it admittedly does. Like Sam said, whenever Janice, Jason's character, tells his bodyguard to go do that, it erupts. And that's where we left off. It's been raining the last hour or so. That's the thing. My character did not anticipate any of that happening. The best laid plans. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, gather my things, leave off in the morning. And that happened. Sam could not have foreseen it. I didn't foreseen it. But we both have to contend with it. Jason could not have seen it, his character either. But this is what's live actually going on in the world that we have to address in character, as character. So whenever I'm ringing that bell and I do it, and then I have to take off like it's in God's hand, let's see which way it goes. This is from my character's perspective. How would he do this? Because I know his initial mindset, and maybe the way it's been tilting here or there, but it'll lead somewhere, and I got to follow where it leads. Find the truth of my character. That's what I do. But we want these rules to be non-invasive. Originally, using the sliding scale, we found that for this game, there need to be some commonality that people still is there in mathematically is still there. It's just going back to more of a traditional target level. A target number, difficulty number. So Dark Age of Man, whenever you roll that whenever the presenter can feel what the difficult situation is. Everybody, like Sam said, it became a tense situation. Everybody around that table feels invested. They know the tension's up. They know it's ratcheted up. They know what's at stake. You can only do that when you're more immersed in the game as a whole without all the roadblocks and stopping and page flipping. The more parts, the more potentiality for breakdown and in the immersion. So we wanted to limit that. But we wanted to have a simple enough um, system mechanic that wouldn't be invasive. In other words, when you're playing, games typically will have the role play yield to the mechanic. Okay, what does the mechanic say? What does the rule say? What are we supposed to do here? And then you, like I said, add something on in a dwarf's voice secondarily. This isn't meant to be this way. The rules support the role play non-invasively. So whenever I pull up and you just get that feeling, it's simple enough the way you know it's a mind or a body. And you've seen Jason's video on this. You roll it quickly to ascertain what happened. You know, which ways it's going to fall. And there's a lot of times whenever you don't know, is in my case, whenever Vidar had to come to that realization of finding out Sylvester was a pagan when I didn't know, Vidar didn't know. And what is he going to do? How is he going to react? It was literally out of my freaking mindset. So I just rolled to find out. Same way Sam had to roll to find out how Westwell was going to react when he saw me receive the holy relic from him, or if he would really notice, right? So we can even use it in those moments of uncertainty for clarity and to see what determines. So just when there's situations that are questionable, you know, if my character being a priest would normally readily have time and opportunity to do something, he can do it without question. But if there's time constraints, if there's situational or environmental constraints or personality constraints, you know, from the person I'm talking to, yeah, that's going to tip it into a questionable situation where a difficulty number has to be set, and then I have to roll above it or whatever. That's what's required. And then to find out, it's simple, but it's meant to be that way to facilitate more immersive in-character roleplay, because being in character, as character, even from the presenter's position, the traditional GM, we call his presenter because he's presenting the world. He's not scripting out anything beforehand. He's playing these NPCs characters. He's rolling these seeds and then connecting the dots and how they weave together and presenting them. And he's just as wide-eyed as like, what the heck just happened, as we are in play. That's the joy of it, because we're all finding out where this thing leads together. That's what we're trying to do here with the game. You know, like Sam says, I'm really glad that he led us in this session. I'm glad that he wants to continue, because it's really until you do it, especially from the presenter's chair and even the players, it's very liberating. You have to think in a mode of character development and finding out who this character is and have an interest in this character. So you're not starting from this point of, I'm an 18-year-old recruit, I've got to play my character through a series, you know, up to a certain position, and everything's more combat focused. We didn't want Dark Age Man to be that way. Jason's playing a merchant, big say. I mean, there's been more tense situations than just negotiations, and there has been swinging swords. It's tense and involved experiencing life as that character. It doesn't have to be a situation where you're trying to fast track to a combat scene to get excited about the play. You get excited about expressing your character in play genuinely. So you don't want to play, as Gary Gygax said, our Frank Messer said, you don't play stupid to the detriment of your character or whatever, or just screw the party over or just whatever. Now, here you're so invested. You have to be that you don't have the inkling of going murder hobo or playing off you. If you like this kind of experience, this kind of game, and you're sitting around a table and it seems real and you're finding out who your character is as you play and you want to know how he responds to these situations that are happening live and organically in real time, you're going to play him authentically. The same way the people around the table are. And you're going to play at a rate and a constant flow so that inside the mind's eye, the communal mind's eye, these things are happening. There's no, other than the bio break every once in a while, there isn't much at all inhibiting a natural flow. And that's what's beautiful about it. But I really appreciate Sam running us and giving us the experience that he had. And I can't wait for more. It's a joy. It's a joy. If you want to really delve into role-playing a character and developing a character and seeing what the character is, he doesn't have to be that, that Army greenhorn, cadet that gets in there and then you watch him as he grows, which is basically predicated on the early war games, and transposed to the early role-playing games. This is a situation where you identify, you imagine, whether you're an orphan and you're playing in Dark Age of Man and you're just saying like, I'm walking down the road, I just, broke away and escaped the orphanage, and what's going to happen to this little dude? Let's find out. Play vanilla anywhere you like. You play with a major dilemma. And you know certain things that are going around. This is the area that you're in. Like you start in Dredgewater. If you can start anywhere, literally, across the thing. But that's the starting position in the main game. Like Jason's character is going through Dredgewater on his way north. Okay, so that's his situation. What is going to happen to this merchant? He's got enough coin to have somebody. What's going to happen to me? As far as my character, what's going to happen to him? I want to find out what's going to happen to these characters. If I'm playing an old blind beggar, if I'm playing a young orphan, nothing has to be like leveled out comparatively. Well, let's make sure everybody gets this. No, I'm interested in the story of this little orphan and to find out where his life goes. I'm interested in getting into that headspace, in that environment, and seeing how he reacts and how he survives as opposed to somebody else. I'm not looking at, I want to make sure that I'm building a character to fight physically against things. No, I want to see character. So if you're into role-playing, as it were, ROLE, then take a look into it. Take a look into the game, see if you like it. It's been really liberating, like I said, and expansive. And in large degree, it's hard to go back to something that kind of shackles you or, to a certain type or style of play. People enjoy all kind of different role-playing games, and I'm not knocking any of them. I played a lot of them. What we're trying to do here is really build something that enhances the exploration of character. And doing it naively is really, I think, some of what gives it that magic, especially for the presenter. He's playing these characters magically, and he's discovering the same way we are, the players. Oh, this is a story. We're all sitting at the table doing that. Anyway, thanks, Sam, for running us and putting up the videos. Thanks, Jason. Always a pleasure to play with you two guys. And I'll let y'all go. And we'll see you later.